Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Ich warte seit Wochen auf diesen Tag und tanz vor Freude über den Asphalt. Als wär's ein Rhythmus, als gäb's ein Lied, das mich immer weiter durch die Straßen zieht. Komm dir entgegen.
Hello and welcome to Gegenpressing, the Bundesliga podcast. This is the transfer show. I'm Manu and Stefan. He's Stefan Bienkowski. Stefan, bud, how's it going?
Yeah, very well. Plenty to talk about this week as opposed to last week where I feel like we were kind of running on fumes a little bit. But the transfer window always provides. And once again, we have some big stories to talk about. So yeah, I'm well. How are you, bud?
Yeah, I'm good. Home for a quick intermission, I guess. Spent the week last week in Louisville and then the weekend in Seattle. I am gone for the long weekend. We have a long weekend coming up, of course, in North America. Canada Day in July 4th. I'm going to spend that in LA. But yeah, quick intermission, then back to work because we have a lot to cover, of course. Shall we jump right in it, Stefan? Because I think there's a lot of Bayern Munich fans eagerly waiting to what we have to say about this. And
let's do it.
It looks like, I kind of felt like about this today because I've been on that Harry Kane train very much from the start. When you have like a multiple choice test and you're not sure and you pick the first thing, you always have to circle back to what you initially picked. And it's always like that, right? There's like different names that, that get like mentioned. And of course, there's different candidates like Kolomwani, Victor Osimhen, all these guys, right? But from day one, it always felt like Bayern Munich really wanted Harry Kane. And there was a moment where it cooled down. And I think that was probably because of Hasan Salihamidzic moving on, because this was very much, and it does still feel very much like a typical Hasan Salihamidzic transfer, but it does look like that Uli Hoeneß has taken full control here of the situation. He's doing this in typical Uli Hoeneß fashions. Opening bid made, 70 million euros to Tottenham, and more importantly, and this seems this has been confirmed to me directly, there is a personal agreement in place with the Harry Kane camp. Whether that means the player will actually move to Bayern Munich, would your horses here? Levy exists, and I think you can tell us a bit more about Tottenham's negotiation tactics in the past. This is going to be complicated, at the very least.
Yeah, I think it has been complicated from the start. I think something's definitely probably changed in the last maybe week or two. And I suspect it probably factors out with Kane and Bayern's control. We've talked about this already on the show for a few weeks now in terms of the kind of striker market this summer and how it's kind of felt like it's waited for one big move to go through that kind of dislodged the rest of them and they all kind of start falling after one another like some sort of, I don't know, house of cards or whatever you want to call it. And I do kind of wonder if this is all Kylian Mbappe's fault because, he
usually is.
Yeah, well, he we get the news last week that, he's decided he's going to leave PSG next summer. That automatically means, he's decided he's going to move to Real Madrid. Now, not this summer, he's going to move to Real Madrid next summer, which means, I think, Real Madrid can't go and spend 100 million euros on Harry Kane this summer, which they were perhaps wanting to do, perhaps what maybe Harry Kane was holding out for, and that hasn't come to fruition. Equally, Chelsea have decided to go down a different route with their striker options. They've obviously signed a young player from Villarreal this week rather. They could end up signing more strikers, who knows. They're not going for Harry Kane. Manchester City, who made an official bid for Harry Kane, probably the only club who have done so, if I'm not mistaken. I made an actual official bid, except for Bayern. They obviously kind of gave up on him last year when they signed Erling Haaland. And when you tally up all the clubs that were potentially interested in signing Harry Kane, it's now shrunk down to just Bayern Munich or Manchester United. And the reports in England suggesting that Man United are maybe going to move in a different route now, because they're currently in the process of trying to sign Mason Mount, who's likely to cost them the best part of 70 or 80 million euros. They're in the process of signing Marcus Rashford up to a new deal, which will almost certainly include, obligations that he'll be kind of the main man going forward up front, which is no bad thing. He's a very good forward. And perhaps Ten Hag just doesn't want to have a kind of classic number 9 in his team. So it looks like any potential move to Man United is kind of dried up as well. Now, that's not to suggest that he's only moving to Bayern because there were no other options, but it does kind of suggest that had he kind of held out for a move away from Tottenham, Bayern's now the most viable option. And, as soon as we saw the reports today saying that Bayern had launched a bid for him, we knew straight away that that's because he'd given them the green light. Bayern aren't going to make a move for a player unless they have a clear indication that the player wants to move there, because they don't want it's a PR disaster, in terms of they make an offer, the club eventually agrees to a deal, and then the player says, I don't want to go there. But yeah, I mean, on the pitch, I think it makes so much sense. I was actually, before I ended up doing my newsletter on Callum Hudson-Odoi this week, I was actually researching a piece on Kolo Muani to see whether he would fit in at Bayern Munich. And, the interesting thing I found was that although I thought he had a really good season at Frankfurt, and although it's clear for all to see that he's an outstanding player for Frankfurt, the more I dug into his stats, the more I realised that I don't think he would actually be a good fit for Bayern for a few reasons, in the sense that, even though he's like one of the top goal scorers in the league this year, if you actually break down his goals per 90, I think they're actually less than Gnabry's for this season. I think he's maybe only third or fourth amongst Bayern Munich players. If you look at how he plays on the pitch, he's far more of a kind of inside forward on the left-hand side, perhaps. He'd be overlapping constantly with players like Sané, Gnabry, even Coleman if he moved out that way, Musiala, whoever. And, I was basically going to come to the conclusion that, or at least I was moving towards the conclusion that, whereas Coleman could have worked perfectly well at Bayern, it would have been like you're kind of squaring a round circle in a sense, or putting a circle in a round a square, whatever the expression is. I'm sure listeners know what I'm talking about in that sense. They would really have to shoehorn him into that team and try and figure out a way for it to work, which, as we all know, is exactly what they did with Sadio Mane last summer, and that didn't really work at all. So this time around, Bayern are saying, no, we want a number 9, and we're going to go get a number 9. And I think he's going to be a great signing. He's not a young player. He's not a, exciting prospect. He's a bona fide star. I think he'll do the Bundesliga a world of good in terms of a profile. And I think he kind of raises Bayern's standards immensely. So it'll be really interesting to see if they can agree a fee with Tottenham, which is still a big if. But I think, you mentioned the Daniel Levy thing. I think he's got a reputation for holding on to players. But I think that changes very much when you include kind of foreign clubs in that regard, or clubs outside of England, rather. Tottenham have done a lot of deals with Real Madrid over the years. And I think Levy would be more than happy to sell to Bayern for a fee perhaps lower than what he'd be willing to accept for like a Man United or a Manchester City. The only thing, and I saw Seb Stafford Blower, who we've had on the show before, really great writer for The Athletic. He's a big Tottenham fan.
I've been bugging him about this for a year, and now it's maybe coming true.
Yeah, exactly. I think the thing that he made a really pertinent point, which was, regardless of whether Tottenham do want to sell him or don't want to sell him, the important thing is that they get a fee that the fans can accept. So I think it will be a sizable fee, and it might be one that Bayern fans might struggle to stomach considering the age of Kane. But it's exciting nonetheless, and if he can stay fit, I think he's basically a like for right replacement for Lewandowski, who they desperately lacked last season.
Thank you for listening to Believe. You can show support to your host by subscribing to the show and giving us a 5-star rating on your preferred platform. Check us out at Believe.com and search for BLEAV on YouTube.